My mom had to talk to him and tell him no. That was normal because he assumed I broke both hips. How else are your feet supposed to be? Being serious here. When I lie down on my back, my feet point, more or less, upward. Turning them too far outward feels uncomfortable, like you're stretching the tendons along the inside of your legs. I was a patient when I was growing up. I had constant stomach aches. Every time I ate, I'd get sick. I went to the doctor multiple times for it, but they could never figure out what was wrong. Eventually, I started to think that everyone lives with pain like that, and I was just being a wimp and couldn't deal with it. I barely ate, such that I was super underweight. I was miserable all the time. I was constantly stressed and depressed because of this problem. Fast forward to grad school. My first year is in China. I'm there for a few months and then, over time, my symptoms disappear. I don't have stomach aches anymore. I gain about 40 pounds seemingly overnight. Now I'm at a healthy, doctor approved weight. My depressive symptoms disappear almost entirely. But how could that happen? What could have caused such a change? Turns out, I'm lactose intolerant. I grew up in the Midwest where pretty much everything has dairy in it, and I'd been eating it constantly for so long. It took months for my system to reset. Being in China, where dairy isn't such a staple, made all the difference. I felt like such an idiot when I realized that was what was making me ill. On the plus side, I feel better, look better, and I'm a much happier person now. TL. Doctor, constant nausea and stomach aches are not normal. When I finally got on medication for my anxiety, I found out getting irrationally angry and frustrated almost to the point of crying and screaming at people for touching things certain ways, putting the dishes away wrong, chewing, moving my stuff a few inches, or talking to me when I didn't feel like talking was, in fact, not normal. Thank God for Prozac. Same. Prozac is the best thing that has ever happened to me. It's the first medication that I've taken that has worked really well for me. When I started taking it and it really started to take effect at about week 5, I came in the bedroom in tears to tell my husband that I felt normal. Yes, when my dose kicked in about week 4/5 I felt drunk and was genuinely worried because one of the side effects is excessive happiness. Turned out that I'd forgotten what it was like to feel anything other than empty, despair or anger. I kept telling my fiance I felt like I'd been gone for about a decade and just how grateful I was he'd stuck around. Prozac, him and our dog are my favorite things. 3. I had what I thought was a mild staph skin infection that just wouldn't go away. I ended up having to see an infectious diseases specialist and was on high dose antibiotics for 18 months. 2 pills 4 times a day. RIP your intestinal biome. Didn't realize until college when having a discussion in a psychology class that most people have a mind's eye and can see things visually in their mind. I have never had a daydream and thought I just didn't have an imagination. Turns out I have aphantasia. Wait, this isn't normal? Nope. If you want to learn more, there's a subreddit called r/aphantasia. Not a doctor, but I had close calls. For a few years, I often found myself falling asleep at certain time, often after work. However, with family advice, I went to the doctors and explains the symptoms. I was checked by a specialized in autoimmune diseases, as that ran in the family. I was given an x-ray and blood work. They noticed my thyroid wasn't working. Given the second of 2 cancer scares, I was eventually diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis and psoriasis. Thanks to unusual on my skin, I was put on hormones and steroids, likely for life. I was a patient, but I walked into an urgent care clinic after I had pushed my teeth through my bottom lip. I was covered in blood and had a large hole in my face. I told the nurse who did the intake I was having trouble drinking water and was worried about dehydration and did not acknowledge the new face hole. She got real freaked out. I know someone who did this. After crashing his bike, a big blood clot fell out of his mouth onto the reception counter at the after he asked how much he was bleeding. Happens to the best of us. I'm a patient. Growing up I assumed I was struggling in school because I was just a stupid miserable fuck up. I had zero confidence in myself or anyone else. Sometimes I would go days without sleeping. Other times I would sleep all day. I thought about my own death constantly. I truly believed that I was a flawed person and that it would always be that way. Turns out I actually have bipolar disorder, and thanks to medications and therapy, I'm a normal functioning human now. Mostly. Anyway lol. Same. But with inattentive ads. Until I was 19. I didn't know it was unusual for my feet to hurt every moment of every day. A lot. I have incredibly flat feet. They literally suction to the floor and make farting noises. I assumed that, like people told me, I was just incredibly lazy. Turns out, most people didn't grow up in constant pain. Thanks. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I currently have a patient who, for no seemingly good reason, consumes food via their nose. It wasn't so bad when it was a softened diet, but the salad was a real shock.